Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 35. If you notice, I am wearing the cans because the theme today is solutions. I am very adept at identifying the problems, as we all are. That is the nature of complaint generation that I don't know, whenever mass media was sort of put together, or columnists, or it's all the same shit, right? So in the effort to mollify or to keep me from losing my shit about noises that I can't control, I'm doing the cans thing. And now I understand sometimes when people use these, it's to create an environment to focus on the person they're talking to if they're on a dual podcast or something like that. So I don't know how it's going to work for me as I speak to myself, but this is the idea I'm working with, is to find solutions. So vis-a-vis the show, for example, I have not heard back from a certain venue, and so part of it being impatience, and you have to remember your shit is only important to you, and other people's shit is only important to them. And when it comes to business, you wonder why sometimes people aren't even that interested in you as a customer. So a venue that I reached out to hasn't reached back, and it's, are you that busy? Is it fucking Madison Square Garden? I don't think so. So like even they probably have a return, they have a dedicated person to inquiries, right? I'm sure I couldn't inquire about renting a Madison Square Garden, but the people who are in the know and the people who service that sector, they probably are responsive. And so maybe this venue I'm talking about just doesn't have that dedicated person, or they're that busy, or I don't know, or they've filtered through my application just that they don't want to let me have a private room to rent for a few hours. So my motor gets revved up and I want to whine and complain and be out of the solution. And the solution here is the headphones. That's why I'm wearing them now, to make this noise environment a little more intimate, to keep me, I'm not going to wait people out to be quiet. I'm going to do my thing and help myself with the focus. And that's what I'm doing here. And I've thank God, long ago, dealt with the sound of my voice as it sounds recorded, so it no longer distracts me or bothers me. And you hear a lot of lay people, and I suppose a lot of people these days haven't had to deal with that because they've grown up with phones and cameras and video of themselves. So now everybody's kind of aware. And these, I'm sure I bought all this equipment from B&H. Audio store in New York. So I'm sure that for a while that was a very niche kind of, you'd be dealing with your recording people and photo guys. Now this stuff is so ubiquitous that we're all aware of monitors, and we're all aware of spit shields and spit guards, and we're all using lighting and things like that. So I'm sure the places like Guitar Center sell less guitars, and they probably sell more microphones. So I've long ago, gotten used to the sound of my voice, and it doesn't throw me. And so I don't enjoy necessarily having the monitor, but this is my solution for the noise in my building to still stay on task. And I guess my solution for someone not being responsive to my dates is that there's gotta be plenty of places that need a couple $300 to fucking give me 2-3 hours in a space, and I'm already working that out. And so I have to stay on task, and that's the solution part of things. And also, I guess that leads you down the path of a lot of stand-up that I used to do. And a lot of what bonding between people is a lot of complaining, and that can be a tricky thing because you're out of the solution when you're complaining. And then, you'll hear somebody say, "Can I just vent, please?" And it's like, okay, yes, of course. And I know I have too, but I don't want to be in that all the time. And, if I'm being honest, maybe I've probably dominated that deal and been the complainer more than the person being vented to. And I have to work on that. And when I think about it, and when I think about the things that quote unquote trigger me or get me fired up, or, oftentimes you're not wrong. That's the fucked up thing, right? The fucked up thing. And when you start to feel alone is you get on a rant and you start ranting about this, that, or the other. And these things might be right. Yeah, it's crummy overseas vis-a-vis the foreign policy or whatever the hell it might be. But what does my rant, what is that? What is the need? What is the little itch that it's satisfying? And I haven't quite figured it out because I'm not always able to dominate on that. But I guess it all goes back to an unsafe feeling. And the idea that a lot of times people these days use buzzy words as a way to self-congratulate. So someone says, I'm a control freak, as if we're impressed by the fact that you must control a lot if you're a control freak. I hear control freak and I hear you must be annoying, or you must be in constant letdown, because what do we really control? And it sounds like you're a can-do person when you call yourself a control freak or a type A, as if type B is, less than, and these things get spoken out loud and uninvestigated. And I'm just trying, I guess, this week to do better with uninvestigated or, the notion of control. I don't have much. I guess there's choices and reactions to those choices. And, we control, tiny little things, what pair of jeans to put on, ankle socks or full length socks. Those are things that George Carlin used to talk about, that the illusion of choice, right? And I don't want to get into it that deeply as far as that's concerned, but a lot of people like to call themselves empaths when it might mean that they cope less well. And so they're asking other people to don't get angry because I feel your anger. And it's like, okay, I probably shouldn't be angry. You're right. But I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole there. But in my effort to fix, and that's the other thing. That's a control issue too. What am I trying to fix? I am as I have been made, I suppose. Or I am the sum total of, chemically, you're the sum total of the chemicals that have been brought together, biology, and you're the sum total of 2 DNAs and I guess more in the lineage. And so I guess when it gets to be your life or your living, you are quote unquote in control of the ship. And so I guess it's a series of things to ingest, things that affect you biologically, chemically, emotionally. I'm dealing a lot since I've been injured, which I've been straying from, but now I've noticed, dependencies on, I used to get a lot more green and sunlight because I was out of the house, and maybe I was on the phone listening to music, or maybe I wasn't, but I was walking and out. And so I'm trying to limit my screen time. And, if you want to be a control freak, control that stuff is what I'm saying. And I want to turn this willfulness or this tendency to be strident, I need to turn that into, and I have, and I still do, but some of these things get misguided or misaligned with, if someone says, maybe if you have a lot of willpower, you need to turn it to positives or turn it to the things you want. And that's where I'm at. I was willful enough to be able to finish things, willful enough to, get off of Diet Coke. I quit Diet Coke. I quit cigarettes, 2.5 packs a day. I quit drinking. I quit a lot of things that were part of a slippery slope and a slide into, the abyss, to be honest with you. Just compulsive things. Cigarettes did nothing for you. The great Alan Carr book, if anyone out there is listening at this point, the Alan Carr book was a miracle. And he's helped 1 million people posthumously and while he was here. It's The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr. But a lot of that psychology, I think, can be applied to, to everything you're trying to do. Because really what he says is the minute you extinguish your last cigarette, you're a non-smoker. Your mission is already accomplished just by putting a date down and stuffing out that last cigarette, which was on July 27th for me, 22 years ago, something like that. And that's the power of the mind and the power of making it so. And I've heard recently from Robert Rodriguez talking about taking the word aspiring out of your vocabulary. And certainly in my case, I've never used that term because I was blessed. I got a paycheck for being an actor when I was 15 years old. It wasn't for a movie, it was for some theater, but I got a paycheck. And so I've, quote unquote, been a working actor since I've been 15. I've always identified as an actor, but there have been phases where I may not have called myself a working actor because I wanted more work and I haven't been able to, quote unquote, retire the day job. But that is more and more economically unfeasible. There are obviously certain star actors who don't draw, who can work on just their craft, but inevitably the people on Euphoria monetize their social media more than when there's only 10 episodes, that can't be enough to get you through the year. So I have been drawing a paycheck. I have gotten residuals this week. I am a working actor, and it feels good to say that because that's all I've ever wanted to be. I'm also a writer and a comedian, even though I have pretty much not put myself on stage in a long time. I have I have the receipts. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean to say, as far as Alan Carr helping me not smoke, my goals are accomplished, and now I will be a one-man solo artist, performing my one-man show, like using that control freak to put yourself in the best possible light, to succeed, to be happy. I used to say happiness was every Thursday in New York. I had a Sports Illustrated subscription, which was a magazine, but the beauty of a subscription to Sports Illustrated is it's a weekly, so that joker gets there every Thursday. And I would go down, I knew something good was coming, that it wasn't a bill, and that's why I enjoyed getting magazines. And I would take that joker, and I said, happiness is that few minutes before I have scoured that thing and read the mailbag and all that stuff. And that was me when I was at a low point, saying that my happiness was tied up in the few minutes from the mailbox up the stairs to my apartment with a Sports Illustrated. And now I know that was speaking of a low expectation for happiness or joy or things like that. And now I know that was folly, a youthful folly, or a propensity to be to equate happiness with shallowness, or darkness with depth, or depth with darkness. And I don't know where that notion came from. I think it was a luxury pose. Obviously, it's a luxury pose to be opposed to joy. It's a luxury pose to know the difference, to choose to be dour, or to choose to be downtrodden, not even downtrodden, but to choose to see bleakness when evidence of the contrary is it's almost disrespectful to what have you, the creator, the universe, whatever it might be. And now I'm sort of, hopefully, right on time with appreciating my gifts, and how the longing for a career in a certain imaginary realm gives me a notion of something uncompleted. And that's a tough one. I don't know why I do that to myself, because they say God doesn't give with two hands, right? So you get beauty, not brains. You get athletic ability, not financial. And I've been I'm not bragging, but I was over 6 feet tall, is above average in the realm of things. I started that way. It's not anything I earned. And, that's given me just a height privilege, I guess. I don't know. But it is almost just an ingrate vibe when you are lucky like I am. And just because you want a little bit something that's not there yet, or how lucky I have been in love, I have evidence of being appreciated and love all over the place. So I'm one of the lucky ones, and maybe it's greedy to think. And then I also want the love of a nebulous notion of respect for my craft, respect as an actor, all that stuff. I still want to do it for the sake and love of doing it, but I guess it's a bottomless pit if you see it that way. And that's what I mean about control. I'm a control freak. Okay, show me a control freak, I'll show you an unhappy person. And because we are inundated with notions of what it takes to be a success, and if it's not look at these these videos of people getting up at 5 a.m. Now, that may be an Achilles heel of mine. I have never been an early riser, and maybe I took after my father. My father worked for the sports department, the New York Times. The deadline for an article in sports is 11 or 12. Something at the Garden can end up at 11:30, and they hustle the article over the telex and all that. Or he retired probably before the stuff was emailed, or in a interoffice computer thing. But they see the old videos where it's like Secretariat 1 stop, full stop. They would call in, there was Joe Louis won in the 15th round of a TKO, stop. That's how they transmitted stories in sports. My dad was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way through to the 90s. So, or maybe the 70s, 80s, 90s. He was a 35-year contributor to the sports department, but he was a late night dude, and I didn't see him in the morning. He wasn't there in the morning when we woke up. He was asleep, and I was always a groggy, hard, late rising person, and I've designed my life that way. And so when I see these and I've picked night work, theater is a night gig, stand-up's a night gig, bartending's a night gig. I fantasize about not having a gig so that I can rise when I rise, and also I'm able to go to bed at a late, at an hour that makes sense, and then I work in between. But I've never been an early riser, and you see these videos where it's like, these motherfuckers getting up at 5 a.m, and then that's what you have to do when you need to be at the office at 9 and you want to get your workout in. Because I know the few times I've been sort of on a daylight schedule, it's like that workout after work is brutal, brutal. And you can skip your lunch. I guess that would be the smart one. But I have a friend from college who's 5 a.m. in the gym. It's his sanity, and it's been something that I've always marveled at. But now I understand it, because if that's the only time you get to yourself, he's been a self-care person as long as I've known him, and this is before that was even trendy, and he found something out about himself, that he needed the gym, he needed that time, and it didn't, and even with kids he's managed to maintain. So these things these things can really get on top of you if you don't examine it and wonder about it. And I suppose if all my dreams came true, but the only thing I had to do was wake up in the morning, I would become an early riser. And so it's a tricky thing. And, I also know that a lot of my angst was I would sleep it off, literally, and literally you sleep off a hangover. But emotionally, I think a lot of my late rising was sleeping off some residual pain, anxiety, or, controlling. There's my little, so, all of the things that you do control, like what you eat, drink, and I was a control freak that I smoked cigarettes. Like I became addicted, and it was a bad choice. That wasn't the 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the gym like my friend. That's a lifelong habit. It was a habit of self-destruction. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I think that's what the progress I've made is. And I think what the thrust of creativity, whether it's requited or not, is the thrust of doing something creative is it's an obsession that won't hurt you. And it's a goal that can be, a true north or a lighthouse in a storm, and we can all do it. And, I guess the real unkindness is to then beat up on yourself about, the levels of quote unquote success, or the tiers that you've made it to. Tears, TIER, and the tears that roll down your face when you don't book shit. But another thing that happened this week, I've shared before that, again with my impatience, but I've shared before that I reached out to a casting director whose name flashed before me in credits of a film I was watching, and I found an email and I reached out. I did that again. I'm on this quest to be considered for a show that shoots in July, and I think it'll shoot in Toronto and maybe New York, and I'm not on the East Coast, so I'm trying to do back channels to get involved in this. And I have a self-tape that's already shot that I've sent to my agent, that I've sent to a casting director unsolicited, that I am keeping in the chamber to launch at anyone and everyone who might take a look, hoping that it shows initiative and the hustle muscle being still something that people appreciate. And in my search of a way in, a back channel, an email, because they're not readily available. People don't want to be inundated with emails. They don't want to be inundated with phone calls. So I found one, oddly enough, and it was an agent who's now turned manager. An agent I met after many years ago. I met him. He brought me in after our showcases from college, and they were a pretty good big agency at the time, and I was choosing between him and another one. And I made the wrong choice. That's certainly how I see it, and maybe revisionist history, but all things being what they were, I definitely made a poor decision there. But it was a naive decision, or I didn't have access to information the way we do now, or I had too much of a need to make it that I didn't think about slow steps and building and relationships. But the point is, I found his email after all these years. He's moved up the ranks. He's now doing his own thing. And I found an email, a Gmail. So I'm like, that's, I'm sure that's there maybe as some kind of requirement to the database. He has to be reachable, even though he's got firewalls up between. And I haven't heard back, which I didn't anticipate I would, but I wrote a hell of an email. I shared it with my girl, but I basically spoke about how my subject line was, "Hey, it's me from a million years ago." Not hey, but my name and from a million years ago. And I said, we met some years ago, and you were kind enough to bring me in, and it was one of the best meetings I've ever had. And I know that now, because I know I've had a few that it didn't go as well. And I was too naive at the time to know it, is what I said. And I said we didn't wind up working together. And I know that is one of my regrets. And then I broke down a couple details from the meeting that I remember. And I just said, look, I'm trying to end around this thing. So if you have any information who might be casting, I wasn't asking for anything but just a nod to, do you have any info? I suppose. But we're always asking, but we're not really asking. And then of course the real thrust of it was, either way, I just wanted to say thank you, because you were really cool to me when before I was anybody or anything, or along the way you were nice to a young actor all these many years ago, and it might not mean anything to you, but it does to me. And so I thought that was a pretty good, sincere email. And I'm going to keep going. I don't hear back from him. It was, you can't go back, you can't go home, they say. I can't undo that decision I made to go a different direction. And his he's not the same. I mentioned a couple episodes back about a man cannot step in the same river twice, because it's not the same man. And it's not the same river. And I think most people don't remember that it's the river's different, and, the man is different. And I think that's what time does to things. That's why reconsidering a relationship, those are often they work, but it's got to be under new terms when people come back together. And hopefully people are working on their own stuff simultaneously, so that, you can't, even if people are resistant to change, they are changing. And so that's the idea I'm talking about with control freaks, and just the way, how am I going to let up on myself? I do feel I'm in a better place, but I also feel I'm really on my case right now, because I'm trying to back to willpower, but you don't have that much willpower to change externals. But I'm trying to will myself to, when I get the okay from the doctor, that maybe I'm doing something different for work, or I don't have to go back to the day job. And maybe that's just too much pressure. Maybe no, I'm going back, and that it's good that it's still there, if it is, even, because I don't control that, and that I can approach it with a short timing attitude, and that I use the time now that I'm more healed and can be more functioning, use that time to change my circumstance, with or without the injury, with or without, it all comes back to that. The control freak is you want these things to be dovetailed, and I'd have to get used to that as an actor, right? You want to, you want to go from, I'm sure even Lin-Manuel Miranda left the original cast. He wanted to be in other shit or have his next one up and ready to go. It doesn't work out that way. Even at the heights, you don't get to, you do kind of keep track of other people's careers. It seems like these motherfuckers just bounce from shit to shit to shit, but you're not really in their lives. You don't know. And so that's the lament for all of us in the creative thing is, you can't control the leap. Or you can control the leap, you can't control, when you splash down. And, I guess that's what I'm dealing with. And I've been fortunate, and I have to remember that. And odds being what they are, you will continue to be fortunate, or you will at least continue to see opportunity. So maybe take fortunate out of it. I don't want to be that person who takes credit for things that aren't in his control, or things that weren't earned. But for the grace go I is kind of how I've been reconfiguring my whole thing. And so a gratitude practice, if you will, is something that is every day, every day. My brother gave me a really cool journal. Well, I've been journaling for years, long form. I did the morning pages. I've overdone it, I think, to some degree. And then he got me a 5-year journal. That's one line a day, and I fall behind sometimes, and then I'm like, I try to remember what I did, and sometimes I write peanut butter, but what it winds up mostly being is I just say something about I got through another one without catastrophe, thank God. they're coming, or they might be there for all of us. But I guess that's how you know you have it good, is that the days you don't, that are inevitable, remind you, you know. I hate that I took for granted the ability to walk until my leg got fucked up, and then I missed the walk, you know, and I feel the energy shift in that I don't get that exercise, although thank God for the physical therapy. But I feel the energy shift, and now I'm going to have to build it back up, and maybe I've been a little more neurotic because I've been in the house, so I have to realize that and consider myself lucky at all costs, and try to build on that for myself mostly, but also for the people I care about. If I could help, you know, my dream is to be so well off that, you know, I can shield some people I care about from pain. You know, that's I think that's about the only upshot of extra cash or extra income or freedom, is freedom. And I don't know if I spoke about this, but I'm a big fan of the 1923 show. And something that really affected me was there's a Native American character that is anguished in her life. It's after, I guess if it's 1923, it's after all of the wars and the you know, decimation or eradication of her people. And these are the shows, the Westerns kind of glossed over that, but this is really getting into it. And she was in one of these retraining schools, either in the northwest or Canadian border, these, you know, Christian reprogramming schools would take these Native Americans and beat them into submission and teach them Jesus and teach them the Bible, and, you know, that, and take away their language, forbid their customs, cut their hair, cut their braids, that heathen stuff. And she's this character who she's being abused, and she fights back because she's got a heart, and she fights every step of the way, and then she becomes a fugitive of the powers that be, which are now the school and the U.S. Marshals. And man, it's powerful stuff, and I don't want to spoil it for you, so bail on this. But there are moments where she's fleeing, and then finally they close in on her, and she fights back. And I know violence is never the answer, but it's moving to me because it's energy and it's consequence and it's all that. But it's the what is moving about it, and why there's tears, not for the glee of the kill, but it's tears for a spirit that will fight to be free. And I think that's, you know, really what we're all after. And the consequences for some people are a lot harder than they are for me. And so you can't take for granted that freedom that is afforded us. And so when you see this character fighting, she decimates her enemy. She wins victorious. But then they finally, the two marshals, one is a Native American and a woman character playing a marshal, they have her dead to rights, and she bellows with this primal scream of like, I've been caught, like I'm not free, I've lost. And this is powerful. And then again with the spoiler, she is exonerated because of states' rights. The judge is like, why am I hearing this case if this shit happened in South Dakota? And the marshals did her a solid by bringing her to justice out of state, you know, and she's free to go. And it's beautiful because it's beautiful because she's finally caught a break in her tortured existence. And there's a great sequence at the very end when she's told to leave the state, like, and they give her a horse and they give her a rifle, and she's gonna have to start from scratch, man. And the Native American marshal says, "You were right to fight." And she says, "Yeah, but it cost me everything." And then he says, it always does. And so I love that kind of writing, that just succinct and heartfelt and true shit. It's and then, you know, when it pays off a storyline, and then what's very impactful is, I guess, once you pull away and put the popcorn down and move on to something else, but what you really think about is, if it's done right, even if it's fiction, what breaks your heart is that it's true. Fiction is true sometimes. And that it happened en masse, and then it's been depicted by drama. And that's why I want to do what I want to do, is because of how powerful that is. And you could hear a slogan saying freedom's the most important thing, or, you know, whatever. You could hear that. But when you see it and you see the struggle, and then you see a character that's not, quote unquote, on your side of the fucking fence, because freedom and these notions, they are colorless, they are borderless, they are partyless. And when you see the soul yearning to be free, which is what our Statue of Liberty reads, the soul's yearning to be free, like, that's what we're talking about. And I guess there's always debates about what that means, but I know what it means to me, and that's really what the happiness I seek is, to be free. And I hope that we can keep that in mind, and tell some dick jokes along the way. And thanks for, you know, being on the Death Session 35. I hope this one wasn't too much of a ramble. I think the earphones actually gave it a tone of verbosity that I was not hoping for. But I hope you are well, and I hope you are grateful for your freedom this week. All right, peace.